So the first thing I need to do is just find. Oh, this is where a little bit of preparation would have been such a good idea, wouldn't it? Right. So the two things that we're going to be talking about tonight is should we keep or remove references to terminology, and if you could only teach one move. Now, I had apologies, as happens pretty much every month, from a number of people who couldn't make it. But a couple of them actually did comment. A gentleman called Shay Colbert, he says, and this is to do with the first thing, should we keep or remove all references? He said, I think it's extremely important to teach the energy points, the three dantians, and the meditation and the meditation of Tai Chi. If you remove all of this, you are left with just the movements, and this is not Tai Chi. It's a shame Shay couldn't be with us. Steve Lyle, who some of you know, Shay, I don't know if he's been with us actually, but Steve certainly has. He says, regarding use of Chinese terminology, no, I do not think it is essential, and I often try to explain concepts, principles in plain English, as I am attempting to teach Tai Chi, not the Chinese language. However, I accept that some people do enjoy and gain satisfaction from the use of the language. I guess that it is primarily of benefit to those visiting China or who have Chinese-speaking teachers, as there has to be someone to translate in the first place and hence try to understand the lessons. Yeah, okay. So, my view has been that I love the odd Chinese word here and there, especially since my wife is Chinese from Malaysia and speaks fluent Cantonese and reasonably good Mandarin as well. I especially like occasionally throwing in a Chinese swear word just so I can see her face go pale. I'm
Can
far.
you teach us some Chinese swear words before the end of the session?
No, I wouldn't dare because Lee will kill me. No, she's in the lounge, which is round there a ways from the office. Right, let's open it up. Who would like to go first? Who would like to talk about, whether or not we should use Chinese terminology?
I'll have a go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to say a lot, but I've enjoyed it. And you remember where the Tai Chi's come from. And to me, it seems very respectful to want to take it on board. You don't have to do masses. But I just think, I think it's lovely. And I think to not have it, it's like forgetting the heritage,
Good
That's
point.
all I want to say.
Yeah, no, good point. Who else?
Yeah, I use all the terminology, at least that which I know, but usually I'll translate it as we go. So, chum, softness, sung, relaxed, but I would generally use it in that way, rather than just say chum and expect them to remember what it is. Chi, I think everybody knows anyway. Yeah, so if I know the terminology and some of the moves too, if I can remember when I'm teaching them, I'll give them the Chinese version. I mean, I've got a list of all of these anyway, that I was given when I started, so I have the ability to look it up if I'm not being too idle. But I think it's important for me anyway to have them in the mix, and hope people remember them. But if they don't, well, I'll give them the English.
That's interesting. I mean, I must say, with grass swallow's tail, which I don't remember or
Yeah.
know the Chinese of, I am more likely to name the moves as Pung, Lu, Ji, and An than I am as
Yeah.
ward off, roll back, press, and push. And as I always explain to my students, for the first probably 20 years that I was taught, I was only ever taught Pung, Lu, Ji, and An without any English translation at all. I'm also extremely suspicious that ward off, roll back, press, and push are extremely imperfect translations, not necessarily of the words, that I don't know Chinese well enough to know one way or the other, but of the concepts that the words embody. And I think that's possibly why I'm bizarrely not a fan of Chinese terminology, because I think most of us, when we've been taught, unless we were taught by somebody who was sort of a Chinese and B, virtually a native English speaker as well, I think there's a real risk that we don't get the full picture of what the words mean. I mean, you mentioned chi, John, and you know, what's the old gag? You know, 100 Tai Chi instructors, and you'll get 101 definitions of what chi is.
Yeah.
Billy or Sue or Ken,
So
thought, please. Yes, Sue.
I find it very difficult to remember anything if I don't use it regularly. So I might learn a word and then if I don't use it for a couple of weeks, I'm like, oh God, what was that word again? So I tend to stick to English pretty much. But I do, and there's another thing, I do like to use the tandians, and there's another thing, is it dantien? Is it tandien? You know, and you could go on and on and on. But I do use the dantiens. I do like to use bao hu yin, and even long quan as opposed to bubbling spring, but that's because I was taught those from a qigong master who used those words all the time. So because they used them all the time, they became they kind of sank in. But quite often I'm saying to Gina, what's that word mean again? Because she's quite clever with remembering certain words, probably used them much lot more than I have. So yeah, I have to be honest that for me, it's not that I don't, it's, I wish I had that memory that would hang on to it and then remember it right away when I want it. But normally I want to say it and then I remember it 3 hours later when I'm cooking dinner, or, 3 o'clock in the morning when I wake up thinking, oh, that's the word.
Well,
Yeah.
So there you go. That's
Well,
what I think.
I try and occasionally teach bits of silliness to my students. So, like single whip, I'll often say, "Oh yeah, single whip," or in Chinese, Dan Bien. That's Mr. and Mrs. Bien's son Dan, and that's that's how I do that.
Association. Yeah.
That's about the only one I've got that one for. Play the pipa, which I always call strum the lute. And I hate
Yeah.
strum the lute. I have a real thing about that, because to me, that movement should be called play the harp. If it was play the harp, it would
It would
fit
make more
in.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but strum the lute, play guitar, play the pipa. But I can pronounce the Chinese Sao Shui pipa really badly, so that I'm fairly certain any Chinese speaking person wouldn't have a clue. But there you see, you've got Cantonese, you've got Mandarin, you've then got, I don't know, probably 40, 50 or more dialects and some other different languages that are spoken in China. So as you go around China, different people are going to say different things.
Slightly different things.
So it'll depend who you learn from. Ken, what's your take on it?
Well, I use some terms more than others. For example, pung jian. I don't know if maybe the only Chen stylist here, but pung is a very important concept for every movement. And dantian, of course, and I use some of the points like the byway, the wei yan, but generally, if I'm speaking about an energy, like, I'll just say pluck instead of Tsai or Kai or whatever the Chinese names are. I don't speak Chinese that well, and in fact, hardly at all. And I can't imagine Chinese people are practicing boxing using American terms, but maybe they are. I don't know. So I do appreciate the culture very much, but just have to work within my limitations, I guess, not speaking Chinese.
Lee, what are your thoughts? You're muted at the moment, by the way, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, it's kind of a yin and yang question, I think, because I guess it can go either end of the scale, depending on who you're learning from and and what your group is that you're teaching. But I mean, I remember when I first started at Tai Chi Former Master Joe, I had never heard of any of these words at all, and the place I studied he had it's an old barn, we never heated, just a little wood stove and very cold in there. And my first day there, I walked in and he said, you have to take your shoes off. You can't walk in without, put your shoes inside. I didn't have anything else to put on. I didn't know anything about what you do when you go to a place like that. And I'm standing there and my feet were freezing. And watching my Master Joe, my teacher, he looked like he like he was standing on an oven or something. It never affected him. And I finally asked, can I put my shoes on? He goes, no chi in feet. He go, and I'm going, feet I understand, chi I don't understand. So I didn't understand that word, chi. So that was my first, exposure to, I guess the first word in my lessons of studying. But as time went on, of course, like everybody talks about Peng Lo Jian because it seems to be the easiest terms to use as far as speaking. But I'm not sure, like you pointed out, Robert, if we really understand the meaning. Because it has more than, I think, one avenue where it goes. Like, Peng, they go Lo Jian, but it also has associations with the elements. It has association with meridian points, and they all have different names to that. So there's names wrapped around names, of course, as everything is. So I think when they first learn it, I think it's for me, when I learned, I didn't use it much, but I value the thought that it is important. But until I understood these, I wouldn't teach it. Even today, I'm not sure I understand it. This is only 30 years later. But anyway, I think that it's important that we don't forget it. It is part of our culture, but I don't know if it's totally necessary either at the same time. That it all depends. I think it depends on a lot of scenarios. So, but like I say, yes and no. That's my answer.
Lovely. Harrison, what are your thoughts, sir?
Hi, I'm sorry, I've been in and out because my connection keeps breaking, so I might suddenly disappear. And to be honest, if it breaks again, then I'm not going to come back again. It's been very frustrating. Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm interested to hear what people think and feel about this because I don't use any traditional terminology at all. And absolutely none, apart from with my advanced students and at the moment I don't actually have any advanced students, but it's more I can sort of say to people, well, look, if you're interested in reading up on these things, all that information is out there and it's available. But thinking about things like Dancian, when going through the process of, because my whole thing is Tai Chi for the Western mind, Tai Chi based on anatomy, physiology, and biomechanics, and understanding it in those terms, and I also keep things very simplified, and so all the moves, the special, greatly simplified 12-move sequence that I've designed and which I teach, I use very, very simple words for labeling them. So rather than things like wild horse tossing mane, I just have things like push and wheel and heart and wrist. I really simplifying it. And for things like energy visualization, when going through this process of getting people to tune into their proprioception, their body awareness, doing a tip to the toes, to the tops of the head, systematic check, sort of adjusting and correcting their posture, their breathing, becoming aware of themselves as a physical being, etc. I then go into energy visualization, but I always talk in terms of imaginary, metaphorical, golden, glowing, fuzzy energy surrounding you, supporting you, protecting you, connecting you with the rest of the universe, flowing through you, flowing up your arms and legs, down through the top of your head, in through the front and back of your chest, like lines of force around a magnet or the aurora borealis, and talk about golden fuzzy energy and say flowing inwards, bathing every part of you, and gathering in an imaginary multidimensional reservoir that happens to coincide with your actual physical center of gravity. So on this basis, it keeps it real for people. And, I don't have a problem at all with using traditional terms and so on, but I do have a bit of a problem with asserting that they are absolute reality rather than conceptual metaphors. So that's just my 2 pence worth. So that's the procedure that I take, and my students seem to be happy with it.
Lovely. Louis, would you care to unmute, sir? Nice to see you again.
I just joined in. Hi, guys and girls. I didn't know from what I understood, the previous answer from Carrison. It's about using the terminology, right?
Yeah, whether we should use Chinese terminology,
Yeah.
English, whatever.
I have a very mixed experience with that because following the YMAA curriculum, they were very strict in the translations they made to English from the Chinese terms. But when it came to Portugal, the adoption of these terms are very confusing because you don't know if you're grabbing the bird, killing the bird, or whatever the hell you are doing to the bird and to the rest of the animals around. And also we did Qigong at the same time during these last years, and some of the things get even worse because then Qigong terminology, if it comes from the medical community, it's different, and then you go back and you do the similar movements, so it's very confusing. And recently with Yang Jun, from the Yang family, I found out that there is a lot of cultural information about the original names that I missed in these 20-something years, and he's very deep in the study of those, and that makes sense. And so I renew my interest in using in looking for those traditional terms, but there is no much information and resources to get around. So we only get some contact with him in the seminars, and not all the seminars he goes deep in that. But there are a lot of fairy tales that are from the Chinese tradition that justify or frame some of these words, and it's wonderful because it brings a richness to the terms that I didn't knew before. So I'm into using the terms if they give you this perspective. But my experience for my 25 years is the opposite. It's just memorizing names, and Chinese was never my strongest point. And the adaptations to Portuguese from the English are even worse because you get 10 books, and 10 books they say it different, and nobody seems to know what to do with those terms. That's my experience.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I mean, it's very interesting to me because I have almost the worst ability there is to learn languages. I've tried to learn various languages over the years, and apart from going back to swear words, apart from being able to know a few swear words in Chinese, Arabic, and a couple of other languages, yeah, languages are not my thing. And when you come to Tai Chi, oh, hi, David, by the way, when you come to Tai Chi, if you, depending on who your teacher is, it's very easy to be A, sort of inundated with funny words, and B, to have explanations that kind of assume that you come from the cultural background that the language comes from, which I don't. It then also often seems to me that there is kind of an assumption that not only do you understand this foreign language, but you understand this foreign language because you've also got a time machine, so you can go back 100, 200, 300 years to get it with the cultural significance, meaning. Yes, Sue, you're raising your hand.
Just listening to what you're saying there and thinking about students, and I think Kerrison was quite, I think it was Kerrison who said it, but it's difficult enough to come into a class and start to learn Tai Chi before we even start talking about energies or anything else. And then if we start adding a language on again, I think I'd lose a lot of people straight away. I think they just wouldn't come back because it's just mind-blowing. The very first session is hard enough without actually stopping to teach them another language as well.
I thought it was the first 5,000 sessions, but I'll take your word for it. So, sorry, can we? Right, I can see Ken and Kerrison, but I'd also first, if I don't mind, let's just bring David in. David, have you anything you would like to say, sir? You're muted at the moment.
So sorry for being late. I just kind of checked the email and found I was going to get in here for some of it anyway. So my apologies, everyone. So my understanding is you're talking about vocabulary, basically, of Tai Chi and how challenging that can be for newcomers and oldcomers too. What we do is in our classes, my wife is very good about helping me with these kinds of issues. And so we have a like vocabulary list that we hand out, and we say, we're going to be using some of these words. This is what an aspect of what they mean. They mean more than that and other things involved, but it'll give you at least a cursory beginning to understanding. Because, you know, how do you, I mean, when we talk about energy, you know, we have that word energy, and I say, well, it's like energy. You know, I just get them to say, okay, well, let's find some new ways of thinking about what that means. And they're concepts that are really huge and are meaningful, and they are important. So I don't think you can just leave out the language that Tai Chi comes with. But at the same time, we do have to find ways of communicating what we as teachers understand, whether that is full enough to be true or not, but at least it gives an impetus towards the deepening understanding of Tai Chi practice. So that's one of the ways that we handle that issue, and of course periodically we go into a particular concept or principle on a deeper level so that they can get in touch with what we mean. And I think it's an ongoing experiential transformation that we all go through. I mean, my understanding of a lot of the vocabulary from when I first started learning until now, that's very different. So I think we have to do our best to help others along that path, because I mean, there are certain things that we don't have in the English language that are anywhere close to what is in the Chinese. And the Chinese language is so very interestingly different in the sense that it's tonal, so it has a different quality of sound and what different sound levels, frequencies mean. But at the same time, you know, we have to do our best, I think, to bridge that gap so that understanding can flourish. And I think that's a couple of cents on that.
Kerrison, I'll bring you in before Ken, just because we know your internet.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Because I'm going to have to leave soon. But I just wanted to share quite an amusing little anecdote with the group on the subject of languages and particularly learning Chinese. But before I say that, I really like that poster behind you there, Ken, your yin yang poster. That looks really nice. It'd be interesting to get a closer look at that. But anyway, I went to China for a while in 1988, long time ago now. But so it was the year before the Tiananmen Square massacre, and they were just beginning to open up. And I made a good attempt at learning as much Mandarin beforehand as I could, but it is quite difficult, as David was saying. It's a very different language from what we're used to. And what I found there was that wherever you went, people would come up to you, and if you're European, they'd start talking to you in English because they're all really keen to practice their English all the time. And one chap was talking to me. It was near where we were seeing the Ming tombs, and he was chatting away. And then he said to me, "Do you speak any Chinese?" And my brain went, oh, click, click, click. And I came up with one of the only two phrases that came to mind. And the first one was, 我学习中国话, which means I am studying Chinese, which turned out to be a bit of a mistake because, of course, he immediately launched into talking to me 100 to the dozen in Mandarin. And I was sort of, sort of nodding and smiling. And then the only other phrase that had stuck in my mind came to my rescue because I could see the other people from the group I was with getting back onto our minibus. So I was able to say, 我要走了, which means I've got to go now. and so, oh, okay, like this. And again, talk to me. And I have no idea at all of anything that he said to me. But no doubt afterwards, when I went away, he was quite impressed with how this Englishman had such a good command of Mandarin. So there we go. So you can get away with just a couple of phrases. Right. Anyway, I've got to love you and leave you. It's great making contact with all you guys again. I really value these webinars. And like we said, Robert, we'll talk by email because I've got an idea for something that I can deliver. And I mean, can I briefly mention what I?
Yeah. Please.
I've got about, I think it's 14 different translations of Tao Te Ching and loads of other books on Taoist philosophy and stuff. And they all have different nuances and different angles and stuff. And it's wonderful reading all these different translations because they're all slightly different. And if people are interested, I'd be very happy to bring along and just show from, okay, we've got this one, which is really dry and academic, and the introduction is as long as the translation. And we've got this one, which is very poetic and so on. And if people, and this one, which is actually a book of cartoons, and so on. So if people are interested, I'll happily do 15-20 minutes on just going through it.
Yeah,
if people want to take
Garrison.
notes,
Yeah,
you can probably be able to get copies of those books somewhere. Yeah, so we'll do that sometime. Yeah. Anyway,
what I'll do, just before you go, Garrison, what I'll do once we've agreed when we're going to do that, what I'll do is I'll also send a note out to everybody to have your own, whichever your own favorite couple of books are, so we can see if we've all got like the same translations or we've all got different ones or whatever.
That would
yeah,
be really
Garrison, thank you very much.
I would certainly be interested to become aware of any other translations that I don't already have. Certainly, yeah. Nice one. Right. Okay, everybody. Bye.
Bye, Garrison.
See you again the next one. Cheers. Okay.
Yeah.
Ken, over to you, sir.
I just wanted to say, Robert, you said you had a hard time learning languages. I grew up in the American South. I barely speak English. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, let me think. English, Portuguese, American. Yeah,
I was brought up in Ireland until I was 9, and I can only remember one thing from my Irish language when I was growing up, which is Onwil Cadagum Dulgadion Leris. And it means, please, miss, can I go to the toilet? That's the only thing I remember.
Well, the only training I ever did in China was 2 weeks with Master Su, I think his name was, in Liuhe Fa. But he was in those days, I don't know, I've lost contact with him, but he was the sort of second in command of the Chen Tai Chi Association for Guangzhou. and he ran morning classes, which people would attend in the park, quite a lot of people. And I went to one of those, but then he would teach me privately. And I had tried to learn some Mandarin before going out, forgetting, of course, that Guangzhou is what used to be called Canton. So they all speak bloody Cantonese, don't they? Which is what my wife speaks, and I should have really learnt it from her. And he didn't speak much English, but he did speak German, because he used to do a lot of teaching. I don't know if he still does in Germany. So he taught me with a combination of sort of a little bit of Chinese, a little bit of English, and a little bit of German. But the only problem was I can't even Linken Richt or something like that, a left and right in German. But he would get them mixed up. So when he said, so yeah, learning was fascinating, and language. I mean, it begs actually another question that maybe it's worth discussing. By definition, this is a language and visual based medium. When you're teaching, you have language, you have visual, but you also have kinesthetic. You can touch students and they can see you in 3D. I wonder how much language actually helps us teach, and I wonder how much language gets in the way. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I was just adding some things in that line. That is the biggest problem I've visited is when people try to put sports science into the explanations, and when you get Chinese terms with fascias and myofascial systems and this and this and that, and try to explain the movements you are doing, putting anatomy names, Chinese terms, chi, it's a mess usually, because it's like having three lenses looking at the same thing at the same time, but three different lenses. So you are trying to explain a movement or an intention. Basically, all the internal part it's the more difficult, because to explain that you have to open your hand or whatever and have room in between the fingers, it's easy to in whatever language, but to say that you are expanding your joints and opening space, and the chi is passing through the joints and feeding and regenerating it, and or at the same time to say that no, it's your myofascial chain that goes from the fingers all across the shoulder to the back and to your left feet, because you have a myofascial chain. That it's very difficult.
Well, I'm yes, David, jump in.
I'll just say one quick thing. That one of my teachers, Tungnong Al Huang, one of my early teachers, he was quoting one of his teachers, which was, "Sooner or later we reach a dead end when we talk." And it's like, yeah, because it's the action of the event has to be shared in some way, and one way that we do it is through words, but that's not it. And the naming of something isn't it. It's not the it. It's the signpost, but it's not the it. So we have to use, I think, every possible cue that we can give to a student, and take every possible cue, hands-on, sound, visual. We got to get kinesthetic, and you also have to look into that internal space of what is my own personal vibration, what's my frequency, am I in my higher self when I'm teaching, or am I in the down here dirty struggle where I might not be elevating my energy to the place where it can be easily obtained by the student. There's so much in the communication that we have to, in a sense, keep throwing mud on the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things things that confuse me about language is if you teach Tai Chi and Qigong, do you when a student comes to you for their first lesson, since Sue mentioned first lesson, do you teach them a bit of Tai Chi and a bit of Qigong, or do you spend, let's assume it's an hour-long lesson, do you spend 55 minutes of that hour-long lesson trying to explain that the word Qi in Tai Chi has got nothing to do with the word Qi in Qigong, because Chinese is a tonal language and they are just out there to hate the English, basically. I have no idea about American speakers because they speak funny anyway. But if you're, I mean, it's just every which way you go, every kind of question that you ask seems to lead in Tai Chi and Qigong to 3 more questions. It's rare, and please shoot me down in flames if you disagree with me on this, but it's rare that a question in Tai Chi leads to an answer. The example I always give, and I've given this example in many different domains over the last many years, is if I ask everybody here from a mathematical point of view, basic maths, what is 2 plus 2? You're all going to say 4. You're not going to say 3.9. You're not going to say 5.6. You're not going to say 854. Yeah. 2 plus 2 in fundamental maths is 4. The minute you try and do pretty much anything in Tai Chi, and just let's talk about physical movements, because the minute you start about the internal stuff and energy, it's a nightmare. I mean, I just think we all should give ourselves really good pats on the back for being such bloody good teachers. Even if, David, even if you're having a, you know, even if you are having a day when you're not feeling your more enlightened self, I'm still looking for the day when I will be enlightened.
Do you know, I find, Robert, that the days that you perhaps in your enlightened self, which I think that's a big ask, to be honest, but there's quite sometimes I will just go into something and then afterwards I go, oh God, I wish I'd recorded that. You know, and then there's other days I go home and I think, oh God, I wish I'd have explained that better. You know, so every session's different.
One of the things that was, I was telling somebody about this the other day. One of the things that I got told many years ago was if you were a teacher of Tai Chi, especially if you were doing anything with people that had any kind of medical, psychiatric, whatever kind of condition, is you had to be very careful as a teacher to avoid the Jesus Christ syndrome. And the Jesus Christ syndrome is where you imagine and start to believe that you as a teacher of Tai Chi can heal the sick, basically, and turn water into wine and what have you. And I have had, and I'm sure we all had, many students who have come to us who have had problems and who have got better. But that is, you know, correlation is not causation, or whatever the phrase is. And I think everything we do in Tai Chi is darn tricky. And I think one of the things I like about these get-togethers is it allows me to get feedback from people whose viewpoint is different to mine and viewpoint who's similar. So, for instance, Louis mentioned fascia. I have 2 words. One's a phrase, really, or 2 words. Anything that's quantum physics or quantum mechanics that anybody says or mentions or references, unless they actually have at the least a PhD in a related scientific domain, and anybody that mentions fascia, I can't help it. The hairs on the back of my neck, and I haven't got many of them, but what I have, stand on end, and I think, oh, bullshit is coming. Large amounts of bullshit is coming. It's not that there may not be quantum effects that apply to Tai Chi. I'm sure there are. It's not that there are not things to do with the fascia that apply to the body that may influence our Tai Chi. I'm sure there are. that I'm equally sure that they are of a degree of subtlety and complexity that is way more than most of the people talk about. But I'm rambling as I do all the time.
I think fascia is easier than quantum physics in that regard.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's easier also to be tricky because you don't feel the fascia, and the student, especially in the first 30 years, doesn't feel it either. So you're you're asking too much for their imagination anyhow. But the reason for bringing that type of knowledge is the need sometimes to explain things that common language doesn't allow. If you want to explain to somebody that it's not your muscles that make you stand, that avoid that you fall, you cannot explain it without talking about fascia, because for people, if you don't use the muscles, what's holding your skeleton? But according to fascia, it's mostly fascia that stimulates the muscles and connects all the tendons. But that's a way of explaining, probably more complicated than any other else. So that's what I was saying earlier, that if you try to explain certain phenomena that the traditional Chinese terms don't explain because they didn't have that type of knowledge or didn't use it that way, and you try to bring modern sports science and ergonomics and all of that to explain those phenomena, why your body behaves a certain way, it becomes very, very tricky. And I think the more useful way usually is stories, to tell stories. Stories are amazing to convey certain concepts.
Yes, John. Sorry, thank you, Louis. John.
This is just an anecdote. You mentioned physics, quantum physics, a while ago. One of the demonstrations that we do sometimes to show routing, I get two big blokes to try and lift my daughter off of the floor, which they can do fairly easily. And then they try again, and they can't. Now, I had this guy in the class for about 2 or 3 weeks. Didn't know where he came from. He was just a beginner. And he turned to me and he said, "I'm a physicist, and what you're doing is impossible," which I thought was quite nice. We got into other stuff after that with him, but it was, it was an interesting take on what we thought was a fairly simple demonstration.
How do you explain that a person roots herself and nobody can take her from the place? How do you explain that to a student? It's not magic.
Well, yeah, but I when I teach, I use every method. I talk. I use terminology. Fascia is a fairly new term that's come up recently, and I don't tend to use that. But I use the traditional terms that I know interchangeably with the English translations, and tell people what they're doing. I mean, in terms of teaching somebody to root, I can do that. I don't know how I do it, but I explain what they should be doing, and they stick to the floor. I seem to be fairly successful at that. And I don't, when I learnt in England, but in a kind of Chinese culture. The teacher is Chinese, and it was very much master-student kind of atmosphere. And although there were English teachers there, people he trained, the whole culture was simply that. So the Chinese terms were used, and they were just explained with a translation. And I've just I just carry on that way. It seems to be successful. Most people seem to get it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'll come to you in a second, Ken, then I'll come to you, David. 'Cause Ken was quicker with the, the fudging of the hand. I think sorry. I just had this visual of John finishing a class and leaving the room and all his students kind of going, "We'll unstick in a minute. We'll be able to walk in a minute." Ken, yes, over to you, sir.
I find the issue of fascia pretty interesting, and I do a podcast on internal arts, and I interviewed a woman who's a fascia expert. She deals with it. She's a doctor, and I believe, in my opinion, that my fascia is like my skin. It's there, it's attached, but if I nourish my skin, I'm probably nourishing my fascia. I can't really control my skin. I can't control my fascia. So to me, that's not a factor. And I believe some Tai Chi people in the past 10 years have started using that term to make people think they know something beyond what they know.
Yeah.
Yes,
I-
David. Oh, sorry, Ken, you didn't finish. Sorry, carry on, Ken.
So I'm done. I just
All right.
I
He
do.
was just shrugging in a Ken style way. Yes, David.
Well, I respectfully disagree in the sense that I have encountered teachers who talk about the Huang, and the Huang very nicely aligns with everything that we describe as the interstitium, the fascia. And the interstitium, when you take time to actually study it, you see that it flows right along the lines of the meridians. It goes, they're definitely in the same alignment and all that. So that the flow of energy, plus the fact that the interstitium has about, I think it's a massive amount more neuronal connections than the muscles. It's like way, way, way smarter than the muscles. If you talk about smart being connected to the brain through that system, and that it is directly linked to the way we manifest our intention. I mean, so that I think that is something for you perhaps to maybe take a look at and see. There's a teacher on, I think his name is Damo, and I forget what his school is, but he talks about it in one of his talks about Yi Jin Jing, and that might be something to examine.
Damo Mitchell. Damo
His name
Mitchell.
is Damo, Damo, like
Yeah, Damo Mitchell. You're right,
yeah,
Ken.
like,
Yes, yes.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and so I've seen a number of his things, and he has an interesting take on things sometimes, which is opposing to a lot of other Tai Chi theory and other, but very interesting, and I like what he says most of the time. Anyway, but he was describing the Huang, and as I'm sitting there, I'm going, oh, this is the Chinese word, since we're talking about language, for the interstitium, for the fascia system. And I mean, we're still kind of learning, because the interstitium wasn't even defined except as throwaway material by anatomists until about 15 years ago.
Anatomists and butchers.
I'm sorry, what?
Yes, yes,
If you go to the butcher, it's the part you take out from the steak.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it is in essence, I think that it would be wise of all of us to perhaps investigate more. I definitely use the interstitium because I think it's like, when you say I can't do anything with my skin, you're doing things with your skin all the time. You're sensing through it. When you move, you don't have to
Sure.
think I'm reaching. It's a way of sensing and drawing information in, and a way of sending information out. And we're doing that with all parts of our bodies. I mean, we don't have to think about our knee or our elbow quite that way, but we do. We initiate our intention, and then it follows through. You don't have to think about every step of the way. Like, I don't have to, if I'm going to get up and walk to my door over there, I don't have to think about, I just have to go, oh, get up and go. I don't have to think about every individual step along the way. That's just too complex and too much work. We set the intention, and then it grows in action. And so I think I think it's the fundamental way that our consciousness activates our physical being. That's my belief. So sorry to disagree, but that's my 2
It's
cents.
not necessarily a disagreement, and that's okay
Yeah,
if it is. I
of
just
course.
think that there's not a
Oh,
lot I can
so
do.
wait a minute. Sorry, Ken. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
Does that mean that I can't actually organise a pay-per-view fight between you and David? Oh, gee, my 10% would have made me at least $50. I mean, the whole fascia thing. I mean, you're quite right. 15 years, 20 years, whatever. I have a fairly old edition now. I don't know what edition they're up to of a book called Anatomy Trains that talks about the fascia. And I will be completely honest, I have not read the whole book. I got into a little of it, and then it just I lose interest. And the thing is, I mean, somebody like Damo Mitra, there are a number of people out there who can do things that on video look really interesting. I am a do it to me kind of person. I went to a couple of instructors a while back, and they were doing a thing where one would push the other, and the other one would be pushed away, and they tried to push me and I didn't get pushed away, and they commented that my root was strong. I have no idea whether it was or not. I have seen, and people I know who know about such things have talked about the rapport effect, I think it's called, which is a psychological effect, which when you're training with people whom you like and respect, when they do something to you, that it will sometimes have a bigger effect, a push, a throw, or whatever. It will sometimes have a bigger effect, not because, and you'll see people commenting on videos on YouTube saying, oh, well, the student is obviously, going because the master is pushing, kind of thing. It can be that that's not a conscious thing at all. It is a subconscious rapport between the two, and because I'm such a moany old bugger, I probably don't have rapport with anybody, so when they go to push, I don't go bouncy bounce. The problem is with anything like fascia, and I was watching a video recently where somebody was talking about grabbing the fascia so they could control the person. If an instructor can do that, it's a bit like if an instructor could do the thing from Thingy Tiger Floating Dragon, the movie. If you could do the thing where you jump from one bamboo tree to the other, that's kind of interesting, but not useful. It only becomes and I think we would probably all agree with this. It only becomes useful if somebody can teach you how to do it, and then can they teach you how to teach your students to do it? And that's where I find a lot of the more esoteric aspects, from my perspective, seem to break down. Yes, sorry, somebody wanted to come in, and yes, Ken.
I just don't want to take up a lot of the time, but in 2003, I issued a challenge through Inside Kung Fu magazine. And I have approached a few people, instructors over the years since then, that I would give them, if they were demonstrating some of these feats where they could knock someone down by lightly touching them or whatever, I would give them $5,000 in cash if they would do it to me. And I haven't been taken up one time, because I think we know why, if we are honest with ourselves.
Well, it's the same as the James Randi $1 million challenge that was out there for
Yeah, and there was a
years
guy
and
named
years.
Richard Mooney. Richard Mooney tried that and failed.
I
And-
met Rich. He was a really nice guy. We went with our family, and my wife and our 2 or 3 kids, and he did this thing where he would try and influence you and make you move, but he was really cool about it. He was like, this seems to work on some people, it doesn't work on others, let's give it a go. And when it didn't work on any of us, he wasn't invested in it. He was a nice guy. He also taught me a defense against a knife threat. In other words, when somebody's grabbed you and holding a knife against you, he taught me, if you like, a jujitsu defense against that, which I would still to this day, 25 years later, consider a useful technique. So I think with a lot of the people that do these things, I think if you're not careful, I mean, all my students take the mickey out of me, the piss out of me, whatever the American phrase is, all the time. None of my students would call me anything other than Robert. I would be very worried if anybody called me Sifu or anything like that. I'd be extremely worried, because it is so easy. And I don't mean, and I think I've said this before, if anybody is called Sifu, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it for other people. I have a problem with it for me, because I have seen how easy it is to allow people to put you on that pedestal and then believe that that pedestal is where you should live. I have trained with people who have trained with instructors who have actually been harmed by their students because the students respect them too much. We've gone off on a complete tangent. That's my fault. Louis, quick, rescue us.
Yes, I'm bringing this a bit to the to the original track. Just regarding this story of fascia and people that do things. Recently, I'm sure you saw actually Damo Mitchell partners in a lot of videos with Adam Minter, who became famous for some type of work that is not that easy. And very recently also, Liang Dehua is touring around at least Europe. He comes from Thailand, I think, also with that ability to do some moves. But it's not the fancy Chinese amazing powers, but it's really an ability to react in a different way, not using muscular force. And regarding the typical train that we learn, I think in general in the West doesn't lead to that type of ability. It doesn't bring it out, because I think in the West it was mostly popular kung fu type of approach, and this needs a different approach. Whether it's useful even for health or for fighting, it's another story. But for instance, work with fascia. If you pick up the Bowen therapy, Bowen therapy uses fascia, and it's quite effective. It's mostly experimental in the way of becomes empirical, sorry, but it works, and it's good for a lot of things. Going back to the original question, the use of foreign terms or the Chinese terms or traditional terms, I remembered, just as you were talking, that in the Chen village, they mostly avoid using the words of qi and meridians related to Tai Chi. They don't like to use it. Somehow they try to put themselves apart in the Tai Chi Chen village from those explanations. They talk about a lot of tradition, but they usually don't use that much. At least the masters I was with, the Chen Zhixiang or the sons of Chen Qingzhou, they don't use those terms. They avoid to use the term qi or those terms.
I had worked with some of the Chen family. I hosted Chen Xiaoxing at my home for a week and had trained with other Chen Xiaowang and Chen Huishen. They do talk about qi, but they don't do it in a metaphysical way. They talk about structure and good mechanics rather than the energy. They don't talk as much about that. But I do think it's part of their culture. and they will do qigong and other things. I do believe it's part of what they do.
I remember a teacher that started. Sorry, just to complete. I remember a teacher that started the lecture. He's American, and the beginning of the lecture on qigong was the 258 uses of the word qi in Chinese. Very
David,
fun.
sorry, John, did you want to come in? I think you were ahead of David. Sorry, John.
Yeah, a while ago, I was just going to come in on briefly comment on something you were talking about. One of the things that disappoints me about Tai Chi, and it's something I try to avoid in my teaching, when I learned, there was an awful lot of what to do. There was very, very little about how to do it. And I think there's something you were talking about a little while ago, people showing you how to do things. I got very little of that. What I know, I learned by myself, by getting a Tai Chi buddy and chucking him across rooms and stuff like that. It's left me with well, I don't actually have a teacher at the moment personally, and very reluctant to put myself in somebody's hands because I find it very hard to trust people. Having said that, Sue, Mike, the guy we were with last weekend, is one of the people I would trust to teach me.
To be fair, John, there has been a little bit of a thing about that, but I'll speak to you privately on that one, John, because nobody else was there on the day. So
Okay. Yeah.
it's just, for another time. But yeah, Mike, it took me a long time to go down to Mike. He's been on my radar for a long time. Neil, my instructor, who Robert knows, he did train with Mike many, many, many years ago. There was a thing, and I don't know, they all stopped training together, and Neil went his own way. And then I've been training with Nancy, and there's always been that thing of, I don't know, there's a respect there, isn't there? Like Nancy's quite happy. She says, you go and do whatever you want to do, and then come back to me if you want to. You're all right. I mean, you're training on Zoom, do whatever you like, and she's really, really nice. And other teachers want you to be just part of their little group, and they don't want to share you. And that's one of the reasons that I've kind of found it quite difficult with Mike. Saying that, I have now done, I think that was my 6th seminar with him, one of them being with Master Yang Jun. So, and each time I go, he seems a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more okay.
Sorry,
with everything.
Stu, can I ask, sorry, who are you and John talking about? Mike
Taylor, he is, I think he's the only or the highest ranking Yang family person in England, as far as I know. I don't think there's anybody else.
No, I think you're right.
So he trains in Cambridge, and I've been contemplating going down to a seminar with him for many, 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 many years, and I did contact him once before, and he was a little bit offstandish, so I never sort of bothered. I thought, I'm not bothered. But then when Master Yang Jun came over, that was my kind of excuse to go down. So I contacted him and said, I'd like to come to the seminar. Is that possible? And he said, oh, yeah. And I'm doing another seminar first. So I did a couple with him. And he is very nice. And there's Martin as well. I don't know Martin's last name, but they are down. Well, Mike's definitely in Cambridge. I think Martin's from Norfolk. And they are the kind of, that's where Yang family is in England. And then there's kind of me up here on my own.
You poor thing, all on your own. Mike obviously is relatively near to us because Cambridge isn't a million miles. So if ever you are going down, let me know. Maybe I would come along and have a look, or maybe you and I could get together. That would be fun as well. if everybody's okay, let's move on to the second subject. The second subject, which I wanted to discuss, is if you could only teach one Tai Chi move, which move would you teach and why? Who would like to make a comment on that? David's counting how many roof tiles he's got. He's like, oh, I don't want to get this one. Go on, David, give us your
Such
opinion.
a hard question.
It is. That's kind of like the question that gets asked. If you only had one food, what would you eat? You know.
Pizza. Sorry.
My wife always says salad because you can put all sorts of stuff in a salad. I would say the opening wave. For me, I mean, it's just if there's only one thing you can teach, I would probably start with that. I mean, why? Because it sort of contains the seed of everything else.
I had a teacher that always, with the opening move in Yang style, would always do it a number of times. And the only reason he did it a number of times was exactly that. He said opening, closing, you know, pung, all the bits are in there. So yeah, that's an answer that certainly resonates with me. Who's got a different? Yes, Louis.
I just somebody brought to my attention this, and I'm very curious about this. So I don't know if you know it. It's all about. Oh, sorry, the name. It's very, very. I just started to read it, and it's very interesting. Tries to study that. I think this was Robert Tanguara was one of the earliest students of Bruce Francis, and he researched a lot on this subject. I think it's his only book, but I found it very interesting. The focus on just one posture and all that you can bring from just one posture.
That would be one of the ones that I was going to mention, cloud hands. The other one is step back to repulse the monkey, which is sort of almost going the opposite way to cloud hands. But I think there's an awful lot of in both of those. Or I have to agree with David. I hadn't given it enough thought that the opening move has an awful lot of stuff in it that really people don't talk about, I think.
Sue?
I love the flowing moves. If I was going to say, my homework to my students every week is just stand in Wuji. Just find yourself in that relaxed place, feet planked on the floor, nice and solid, all of your weight equally in your weight. Lift your head up, make sure your ears are over your shoulders are down, your chest sunken, and just stand there for 3 minutes while you wait for your kettle to boil, while you're waiting for your bath to run. Just put yourself in Wuji for a minute. And that's my homework to my students almost every week. But if you ask me what moves I love the flowing moves. I love the single whips and part the wild horse's mane, and anything that flows around. Even the difficult fair ladies work at shuttles. I love all those. If I can really feel my body going, I'm happy with that. But that's my personal. I'm not necessarily talking about energy. I'm just talking about. I just love to feel my waist go, my shoulders go, and my arms follow, and everything flows. That's my favorite. However, I definitely would always go back to Wuji if it's teaching, just getting people to be at peace, standing in that nice, comfortable state.
Thank you. Who wants to go next?
Well,
Billy? Sorry, yes, go on. Who was that?
Virginia, Gina.
Oh, Virginia, yes, carry on, Jenny.
Yeah, well, as I say, I'm not a teacher, but a move that I absolutely love, and this is for me rather than for others, is slant flying. I just love I love the flow. I love going into it. I love feeling I can get under somebody's shoulder, and it's just wonderful. But I say I'm not a teacher. That is just for me. If it would be, I say I don't teach, but if it was for me, it would be the beginning moves. I first learned Chen Ching, and the opening moves seem a little bit more. They seem a little bit more complicated, but it's just the way that gets you. It just gets you in the mood for what comes next.
Thank you. Ken or Billy or who hasn't? Yeah, Ken.
I would choose in the Chen style a move called Buddha's Warrior Attendant Pounds Mortar, because now I look at it may be a little different. I do love the flowing moves like wave hands and the Chen version of step back repulse the monkey, which is step back whirling arms. But I would approach it from more of a self-defense perspective. And I think Buddha's Warrior has so many techniques, from deflections to arm breaks to knee strokes to sweeps, arm bars, elbow strikes. It's for me that would be my favorite. If you put a gun to my head or nunchucks, I would choose that one.
Billy?
Okay. Actually, I don't know if I really have one. I kind of agree a little bit between what Stu said and David said. I'm kind of like in between the two, in a way, because I think you do need to spend a lot of time. I don't even tell them Wu Chi. That's just another word that you have to explain. So I usually just tell them to stand like Sue described, that kind of method, and just sense things. That's all. Just sense. Just be. Because I think it goes more than just the physical aspects of the movement, but it's also the emotional aspects. Because energy. Everybody talks about energy. Energy is both physical, emotional, spiritual. It's everything. So everybody experiences things differently. So I remember at the farm, Master Joe, Tai Chi farm, which David knows very well, kind of like where I met David in a way, and that in itself was a blessing because you meet good people, that when you go to these different places. And so anyway, he had to talk about the last class of his life was that Sunday before that accident he had that took his life. But the whole class was basically on do the first movement. Let's do the first posture. And we've never heard Master Joe talk like that. He always used to talk to so many, and everybody was doing their version of the first posture. And there we were doing Chen style at that time. And he kind of said, very good, but do it again. That's how he used to talk. Very good. That's just Chinese, by the way. I understand that Chinese. Very good. You go. So we all did it again, and it kept going on. I mean, his class lasted an hour, and he was not satisfied. He just kept saying, doing it again, do it again, do it again. And at the end of the class, for a whole hour, we're doing this. Never in my 7 years there did we ever do that. And the ones that were there, we all talked about what was he trying to teach, or what was he trying to tell us, and we didn't really. I didn't have an answer, and I don't think anybody really did. But it didn't come to me until many years later that my sense was that it wasn't the posture of the first movement that he was wanting us to demonstrate. It was, what did you do before the posture? And that was my sense. I could be wrong, but it made me think about how important it is to not just understand, you know, the Wu Chi energy that they all talk about in posture one. But what is the essence of it? And Master Joe used to say to me, if you know one, then you know all. And I thought that was, you know, quite, you know, quite profound in a way, you know. So over the years, and I meditated on this for quite a while because I just didn't, it just was something that I thought was very important. And to this day, you know, it's still kind of maybe a mystery, but I think I got a better feel for it than I did, you know, well, 20 some years ago. So I kind of stay with those two movements. I don't particularly teach one to anybody over another posture. I think they all have their great qualities. They all have their great. They're all associated with something. Every posture has an association with a meridian, has association with everything, you know, that we do. So, you know, like repulse the monkey. I've learned over the years that you're doing the 5 steps: left, right, center, back, and look, and then circle it. You know, it's all about the 5 steps, the one posture. You know, so that's just one posture. So, and then I go back to Master Joe. You know one, you know all. So, how's that association with beginning? So that's really my take on this. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's interesting. I mean, I was interested when Louis showed cloud hands, because cloud hands would be my choice if I could only teach one posture, but it would be my choice primarily for the same kind of reasons that Ken liked his posture, which is in cloud hands. There are evasions, there are deflections, there are strikes, there are breaks, there are, I mean, you can argue, and I have seen it talked about, funnily enough, by karate people, that almost any single move, any single posture, any single form, whatever you want to call it, actually does contain all the bits from a fighting point of view, the locks, the throws, the breaks, the strikes, the whatever. Pretty much any thing that you do, maybe not that particular thing, but anything that you do, maybe even that thing, maybe I've just invented a new secret move. Anything that you do can be interpreted in a very wide number of ways. And that comes back to what Billy just said, which is, you know, the one thing being everything. In other words, there is definitely an argument, and I guess this tends to the esoterics. I'll have to be careful how I phrase it, because you know how much I hate esoterics. There is something about Tai Chi that is not the physical things that we do at a Tai Chi class at all. It is how over a period of time we become Tai Chi, our neurology, our brain, our thought patterns become maybe more flexible than perhaps we once were. I don't know if anybody else would agree with me, but I certainly think that my outlook on things and people and stuff is more flexible and more nuanced than it was maybe 30 or 40 years ago. Yes, John.
Thank you for rescuing me. Yeah, I was only going to agree with you because, and this was a conversation we had in a class a few weeks ago. I trying to tell people what they're going to get out of it. I think, in fact, I know, I'm a totally different bloke to the one I was 22 years ago when I first started. My attitude to things is different. My body's changed in the way it works. Just absolutely everything. I can't put it, you know, any differently to that. But you're right. I believe it does change people, providing they get into it, because there are an awful lot of people that come along once a week, cup of tea, have a chat, do a bit of form, and go home again, and they never think about it after that.
And that's fine, but it's not really what we want, is it? That's how I would say it to my students. I say that's fine, that's okay, you can do that. I said, but it's not, you won't get the good stuff.
No, that's right. But I've got 3 students, 4 if I count my daughter, 5 if I count me, who get it, who do it, you know, and have changed. And I mean, my daughter's been doing it nearly as long as I have, but I've got one guy who started with me when I started teaching. And I'm not sure he's got it yet, but he's working on it. But I've got another guy who recently came into the class and said, I've been here 10 years. He's got it. And I've got a woman who, 7 years, I think she's been with me, and she's absolutely into it. Those people, and they all teach with me. We talked about this a few meetings ago. But there are others who are never gonna ever, and they come along, and they have a nice time, and you know they're pretty loyal. It needs something else from the individual. I think it was. I'm sorry to mention John Ding again. Actually, it was his son Alan who said to me, "I can only teach you about half of this. The rest you got to learn." And that changed my attitude to Tai Chi. Actually, that one time he said that, and I think it's quite true. You know, you can't teach it.
I'll come to you in a minute, B. Lee, because you've got your hand raised. But Louis raised his hand briefly. But
yes, there are some authors that talk about the Tai Chi body, that this training affects your body in a way that then you can use for your everyday life. And that is something the students find difficult. I don't know, like you were saying, John, only at the beginning or all their lives. That is this integration, which is totally different from any other sport. If you learn football, you get more endurance, more thoracic breathing abilities, more stamina, but you don't have this feeling of the change in your body that you get in the Tai Chi type of workout. So yeah, some changes.
I wonder, I mean, it's interesting what you say, Louis, because one of the things that I have talked about in class before, and like on forums like this, is I personally believe that Tai Chi has changed me. But I honestly don't know whether if 40 years ago I'd taken up knitting or I'd taken up 1,000 other things, whether the change would be as great, because it may be that because we all attribute the changes that we have experienced to Tai Chi, that we, again, it's this, is it causation or is it correlation? I don't have an answer for that. Billy, you wanted to come in, and then you, Ken, I can see.
Yeah, thank you. You talked about students, whether they get it or some come, some don't come back, or things of that nature. But my only experience is I've been teaching here at Hidden Gardens now. This is in Pennsylvania for probably since 2000, which is almost 25 years, 26 years, and I didn't come here actually to teach. When Master Joe passed, I just come up here looking for a teacher. I never could find one because I'm in the rural. So I kind of became my own teacher again in my own way. Nature has been a great guide, by the way. But anyway, so for somehow, the way of nature is, they find you. Somehow people come. I don't know how, but I don't have many students. Maybe over the years I've gone through maybe 50, but I probably have about 20, maybe 25, 30 that were with me for all those years. They've always come back, and I thought about why is that? it can't be from my teachings because I'm still trying to learn. So it has to be something else. It could be the coffee, tea, and everything after class that I serve them, and I treat them too good. So maybe that's why they come back. But the thing is that, you know, I call them a family of cranes because I feel that way. I think we're very close and very knitted, and we do the best we can from the, you know, from the limits that I can teach anyway, and the fact that they're still here and they're still you know, and they are teaching. Some of them are teaching on their own. So I guess it's a matter of just letting everything, like I said before, let everything be, let it fall natural, and see what comes out of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I'll just say something very simple. I mean, how it's changed me is it's given me a sense of joy, which I've not had to the same extent before. And I think you get the feeling that it keeps on giving and giving and giving. It always gives back what you give it. Something more will come to you. And I mean, that's why I do it.
Thank you. Yes, Ken.
I just wanted to say that if you had started knitting 40 years ago, your body might not have changed, but you might have some really good sweaters. I think a lot of the reasons we do it, we have to do it. And a lot of people come to our classes over the years, they don't feel that need like we do. It's like anything, you have to find what really resonates with you. And if they come to class, I can tell pretty quickly if they are going to be there very long. But, you know, I just realized sitting here, I started in martial arts 52 years ago last night. And so we're still plugging away, trying to learn. I'm still studying. And that's the kind of person you just hope to get.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been where we live now, this will be our 9th year, I think, here. And I've got some students that have been with me 8 years. And it's quite interesting. I've got students that have been with me for 8 years who are interested in Tai Chi. And I've also got students that have been with me for 8 years, and pretty much every week that a class is available, they'll come to class. And that they are just coming because they like coming. They're not. One of my students once famously, I was talking about some aspect of Tai Chi, and this is where I say about them, you know, they wouldn't call me Sifu, and she commented, "Oh, I don't know, Robert, I never listen to anything you say," which at the time I was both deeply hurt and really quite pleased at the same time, because on one hand, you know, you're missing all these words of wisdom. On the other hand, the fact that you're still coming, so it's working for you. And one the other week, bless her, said, because I made one of my terrible jokes, and I can't remember if I told you this at the last meeting, but one of my students said, "Yeah, I only come for the bad jokes." And I thought, well, fine, you know, whatever influences you to do something, whether it's going out for a walk, knitting, doing Tai Chi, it's got to be beneficial at some level, and maybe for the ones that take it more deeply, it is more beneficial at other levels. I'll come to you in a minute, Louis. John, you first.
Yeah, Ken just said you can quickly tell, you know, which students are going to keep it up. Bit of a phenomenon, I think, but I find the more enthusiastic they are on the first lesson. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had a woman a few weeks ago, and boy, was she into it. She was going to learn it. She absolutely loved it. Haven't seen her since. That seems to be the pattern. The ones that come and you think, I'll never see them again, are the ones are there next week and every week after.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the one that says, "I'm going to be your best student," you know they're not going to last any time.
Yeah.
The best student for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, as we were talking, I was just realizing that a bit of the of framing what I was saying before, the comparing learning Tai Chi with any other physical activity or even another activity. I was very surprised with some students that I have that came to me at the end of a couple of classes and say, I feel better. I have less pain. Others say I move better. Somebody who has some cognitive problems, sister said she's more calm since she start doing. And I don't see that in playing football or perhaps some knitting or gardening can be attributed those qualities, but I don't see that.
Gardening, that's an
Gardening.
interesting one. That because I'm sure, like me, you have students who are keen gardeners. It's a common thing for people to have. And gardening, in many ways, I think that there's the connection with nature. There's the relationship between you and nature and nurturing. So if I had my way, my garden here would just be one big bit of concrete. I'm not a gardener, but I can get how that could be another route up the mountain. David, yes.
Yeah, actually, speaking of gardening, and then I'll go on to what I was going to say. Gardening has been shown to be one of the best exercises because you do all sorts of stuff for a long time when you're out working in the garden, pulling weeds, digging. It's a workout, and wheelbarrowing stuff, and it's an ongoing practice where someone might go work out for like a half an hour. You might be out gardening for hours at a time with weightlifting in a sense of what you're doing. So it has been shown scientifically to be actually quite a good physical workout, and also I think good for the soul. One of the things that that I like to do for my students is talk about Tai Chi as an experiment, that it is an experiment that we undertake to see what will happen to us, because as we are doing Tai Chi, we are engaging in practices as we learn them, and if we apply them, and if we keep at the practice, we are studying ourselves. And anything that you study, anything that is part of the experiment is changed by the experimenter's witness. So when you're witnessing yourself in the practice, you are changing yourself as the scientist as well. So as the scientist gets better at perceiving what the experiment is about and what's happening in the experiment in a sense expands as your practice expands and your abilities and so forth expand. And so I like to frame it that way. And coming back to, I think someone was talking about Adam Meisner earlier. I think Louis, you were talking about him, and maybe Ken too. And I remember watching a couple of his videos, going, "Wow, that's really awesome what he's doing there." And so because of some other things that I teach, I said, well, let's do an experiment. And so we did the experiment, and lo and behold, yeah, once you align with a certain type of awareness in your body, instead of resisting what someone is doing. For example, we do a simple test when, that I'll talk about. We'll take a physical position and say, okay, come push. And if I'll say, okay, now the first thing, resist, and people will resist, they'll get pushed over, right? They're resisting. And then I'll say, okay, now this time accept. It's a subtly different way of moving your body. But if you accept, if you receive, think of catching a ball. You don't, you reach for and then you accept. Young, you reach, that's the Pung energy. You reach and then you receive. And so when you are reaching out to engage by reception, then their energy is yours and you can put it into your root and people can stay. And so we did that as an experiment, and everybody went, oh, because resistance is futile. We know, for those Star Trekkies out there. And I have to say that I think that that's one of the great things about the internet is we can watch people's experiments out there and go, does this work? Is this real? Go test it. And I think that's the thing. And so, fortunately, I've had some really great teachers over the years with Chung-Yong Al Huang, Master Zhou Zhenhua, Yang Jingming, William Chen, Grandmaster William Chen, and my current teacher, who I haven't seen for a while, Sun Yongtian in China, the head of the Sun Style. So I've been very fortunate to have had that kind of an engagement with people on profound levels. I just have one more quick thing, and then and this is about some of the more mysterious things that we see out there. And I was in China traveling with the Association for Research and Enlightenment, and we were there to study Qigong and meditation. So we were going to all sorts of amazing places, temples, talking to the head abbots, and training with Qigong practitioners, and going to Qigong hospitals. And we had a day that was not on our schedule, but came to us, and it was spending some time with Master Shi, and who's passed away long since, because this is well over 30 years ago, I imagine, back in the 90s, I think. And so when I saw this demonstration, it, all of my oh boy, do I want that talent came up, but at the same time, or that skill, at the same time, my skepticism was so huge, because Master Shi had one of his students approach him, from away, and the student came at him, and he put his hand out and did this little twist, and the guy kind of crumpled in his body and twisted and kind of fell over. And I went, no friggin' way. How, I want to be able to do that. I don't believe it. Can you do it? How, So I asked, can you do that to me? And he said, I really don't want to, because I'll probably, translation was something like burn out your internal organs. Oh, okay. Okay. But he's, so I'm like, okay, is this hypnosis? Has he got the quality that you were talking about earlier? I think it was Robert that was talking about this, that, yeah, there's a thing that happens and everybody works together. Okay, so we can push people further, because they're going to let you push them further. I don't know if that's it. But so he said, let's do this. He chose one of our group, and the group person was a strong guy, and so forth. And so he was a doctor, so his mind was, really strong as well. And Master Shi plucked a leaf off this tree, and it was a relatively thick leaf. I don't know what kind of plant it was, but it was a, pretty solid leaf, not like a very thin one. And he holds it up, and he says, tear the leaf from my hand. And so the doctor reaches up, and he thinks it's going to be a very simple thing. And he goes, and he's straining to do it. And I'm watching him going, it's a friggin' leaf. It's a little tiny leaf. What's the deal? And he could not tear it. And you can see him. He's starting to sweat. He's working hard. He cannot get that thing to just go. Tch. And so finally, after a fairly lengthy time in that kind of a circumstance, Master Shi just went, tch, and he tore it. And it was off in the other guy's hand. And it was like, okay, all right. Something was there. I don't know how that occurred, but it was real enough. I don't think he hypnotized him in the time that he had. I'm a hypnotist. I don't think he did that. I think there was something that he was capable of doing that was pretty extraordinary. And I'm only sorry that I didn't have more time to spend with him over time to learn that. So it's an experiment. I think the whole key is, as we experiment, as we open ourselves to the possibility of, yes, there might be esoteric, very secret kind of ways to develop ourselves to that place, but what's the basic real thing to get us to as close as possible, simply to be as happy as we can be, as healthy as we can be, and to be connected with other people in the best possible way.
Yeah, I think that hits the nail exactly on the head. Happy and healthy and connected is kind of what most of us want. I mean, don't get me wrong, I would kind of like to be able to go thump and send people flying from 50 miles away and leap tall buildings. Yeah, yeah, sure, of course. I'm egotistical enough and naive enough to want superpowers. Yeah, I get that. But I've only once or twice seen things that I don't have a rational explanation for, and I have never been taught to do anything that does not have a rational explanation. So I live in hope. But you mentioned, I mean, I think I've said this before, I've only trained once with Adam Meisner at a seminar that he put on for a day or a couple of days, and there wasn't really enough happening for me to get any real feel for what. The only thing that we were holding static postures for extended periods of time, and he wanted me to hold, I think, to like strum the lute for 20 minutes, but it was on my bad leg, so I switched to my good leg kind of thing, because I'm not looking to damage my damaged bits anymore. And then at a later point in the seminar, he basically said to learn his system I'm 72, so I'm still a youngster, but I was about 60 when I went to his seminar, or 56 or something, late 50s, early 60s. And he said, oh yeah, to learn my system will take 10 years. And I thought, I don't want to invest 10 years in something that might be great or it might not. I spent nearly 3 years learning Chen style about 5 years ago now. Yeah, about 5 years ago when we hit lockdown, because I'm training every day via Zoom. And Chen style was great, and I went and trained with Nick Taylor, who's a really good Chen instructor, and I trained with Li Ming Yu, who I'd met before. And in the end, I found, I think it was either lazy about tying ko, or one of the moves in the early part of Chen, really my knee didn't like it, and I thought, no, Chen style is not for me because I'm going to damage myself more. But you find your own way, and you know, I mean, Ken, I'd like to ask you, because I know you, as well as Chen, you do Bagua, don't you, and Jingyi?
Yes, I did 10 years of Yang style and then switched to Chen, but yeah, I do Xingyi and Bagua as well.
Do you find any, sorry, it's going completely off topic, but, and if anybody wants to come back to the single move thing, please do. But do you find, and we'll open this to everybody, do you find anything you do in any of the arts that any of us practice are either particularly good for us as an individual or not as good for us as an individual? Let's leave students out of it. Let's talk about personal experience. Ken?
Good for us in what way?
Physically, as I say, I've got a dodgy knee, and I found that Chen style was going to make my dodgy knee worse. Yang style doesn't, and Sun style, the little bit that I've done of that, didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. Xingyi is a little harder. I mean, its goal is to drive through an opponent, and Tai Chi is a little gentler, but Bagua has a lot of twists. I lost a lung in 2009, and Bagua was very difficult for a few years, compressing and twisting, and had a paralyzed diaphragm too. So that's a harder one to do as you get older, I think. But Tai Chi, you just do it slower, I would say. Chen style has a lot of the pops and the Fa-Jian and the fast movement, but you can do it very slow.
Anyone else? Yes, Luke.
Yeah, the experience I had with Chen was, first, the master didn't like it to do it slowly. You have to do it at the real speed. And it's not good if you are not in shape. You have to have a physical ability to do correctly, especially the second form with jumps and kicks and that. The first is easier, but still physically very demanding. Tai Chi, for me, it was the opposite. It was very difficult to get it to calm down, to soften, and to know what soften is and not lump, but extend. And that took me many, many years to get it, or to get closer to that feeling.
I'll have to come over to Portugal and train with you, because after whatever it is, 40 plus years, 45 years, I'm too fast and too stiff and I don't know about the rest of you, but the more you practice, the more you see all the things that you ought to be doing that you're not. Is that, or am I the only one? Please, somebody else say that.
Agree with that. Yeah.
Yes, Sue.
Absolutely not. I mean, I find I'm saying all of the time, knowing my own body is not what I'm saying to other people. I can feel my own shoulders rising, and I'm like trying to keep them down while I'm saying, keep your shoulders down. I think when you're on your own, in your own corner, your own backyard, and you're doing your own thing, you're in your own zone, and it's wonderful. And I think you can really, really enjoy it, doing it for yourself, breathing for yourself. When you're teaching or when you're with anybody else, there's always that. There's just a little bit more. I don't know, trying to be perfect, perhaps, trying to be sure that you're showing everybody right, you're teaching everybody right, you're doing everything right, you're thinking, you're talking, you're doing, and it's all happening all at the same time. And I think it's physically impossible to be in your own zone when you are doing it. I know it's for yourself as well, but it's for other people.
Yeah, teaching is hard. I don't think any of us here. I mean, obviously, Ginny, I know you don't teach, but I don't think there's anybody here. I don't think I've ever met maybe more than a couple of people who I think would probably say that teaching is easy. I don't know if anybody here, Ken, John, David, Billy, anybody want to say, yeah, teaching is easy? No. Okay. We're on the same page with you for that.
Billy could do it.
Yeah. Well, Billy, I don't know if you noticed, but he was obviously paying attention to the comments I made about the naked pictures of people behind you, right? And he's been flashing that leg of his the whole time. It's been, look at my leg, look at my leg, look at. I'm not saying, so obviously there is obviously a big competition between which one of us do you want for your next group of pictures. Billy, you're muted.
Oh,
Listen, if you can have your hair grow up with chi, I think you can grow hair too. Okay. so your whole body is beautiful. What can I tell you? Yeah,
I'm going to take up knitting, and I'm going to knit myself some muscles and some hair.
What about these advertisements that's going around now with all these Tai Chi? They've got these wonderful, perfect bodies.
No,
you've just got to practice for 6 months.
What a crap.
Yeah, complete bullshit. I actually, there's a guy who's like, I do only Tai Chi. But if you look at their website,
in 7 days, you have this body and you'll be perfect.
No, it's a complete.
And your wife will be very happy and all of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is absolutely. I looked at it and I did a little bit of Googling, and the general consensus was that it's pretty much a scam to get you to sign up, and then you sign up for something else, and
what you sign up. I had a program from these guys. It was just for fitness, and what you sign, it's the same program. They just changed the name. So what they are selling is recordings of fitness exercises. Naming
it's not Tai Chi.
Tai Chi. It's not Tai Chi. It has nothing to do with Tai Chi. They use the same exercises that they already use in the fitness program, and they use it in selling it packaging
Yeah.
as a Tai Chi.
Doesn't surprise me in the least. But what's the old phrase? You can't protect a born gull from a born shark. There are people that want. If you could say, Ken, you teach Chen style. If you could say, come and learn, what's the form? Laoja, isn't it? Come and learn Laoja. I will teach you Laoja in 24 hours. Come and spend the weekend, and people will sign up for that. The fact that somebody else might say, well, come and learn it, and probably in 7 years, that'll be great, kind of thing. 7 years, 6 years, 5 years, 6 months, too long. Can we have it in 24 hours,
Yeah,
please?
but it's also their business model, because their business model is to get people subscribing. People are never going to do those programs, either the fitness or whatever you call it. So they just need to have to name it differently, so people buy the subscription and never do it anyway. So you can call it whatever name you want,
Yeah.
and what they just want your subscription, and that's it. And you pay for 6 months
Yeah.
or whatever, and you never do it, like most gyms or whatever.
Exactly. Gyms. The business model for most gyms is the fact that they can have availability of equipment for, say, 100 people, but they will have 1,000 members on their books, because they know 900 of them, well, 800 never turn up, and the other 200 don't turn up regularly, kind of thing. It's great. I wish I could do that for Tai Chi. Maybe I should be. Maybe I could be really, really rich. Yeah.
Maybe you could do a plan and teach us all how to do that, Robert. You do a business plan.
I could probably. That's the other thing. I would start advertising that's the program that teaches you to do it. Yeah. And whenever I see one of those adverts, I always immediately think, is the house and the car in the background of the guy that's teaching you how to be rich, is it his, or is it just, something he's got off the internet?
One of the things I always tell, am I muted?
No, you're okay, John.
Okay. And one of the things I always say to new students is that the drawback with Tai Chi is you have to do it. I say you can join a gym and never go, and you'll be fine. But with Tai Chi, it's a problem. You've actually got to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's like, they used to say about karate. It's, if you want a black belt in karate, you go to the local sports goods shop and
Buy one.
Buy one.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm being shouted to tell me my tea's ready, so I'm going to say goodbye.
Tea is ready, is it? Tea.
My tea.
Okay, let's.
Tea and cookies.
Yeah, tea. Okay, bye to. I think, in actual fact, shall we wrap it up? Is everybody happy?
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up till next time.